Great is your faithfulness, O God. You wrestle with the sinner's restless heart. You lead us by still waters into the sea. And nothing can keep us apart. the chasm that lay between us. How high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The Rock of Ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear song, John. You will learn why I'm playing the song in the sermon when Dan begins. So there you go. Why can't I no more of your darkness? All my pictures seem to fade to black and white. I'm growing tired, and time stands still before me. I'm frozen here on the ladder of my life. Too late to save myself from falling. I took a chance and changed your way of life. But you misread my meaning when I met you. I closed the door and left me blinded by light. Don't let the sun go down on me. Although I search myself, it's always someone else I see. Just allow a fragment of life to wander free. Oh, I'm losing everything. It's like the sun going down on me. Why can't I find all the right romantic lines? Well, see me once and see the way I feel. Don't discard me just because you think we mean you harm. But these cuts I have, oh, they need love to help them heal. Oh, don't let the sun go down on me. Although I search myself, it's always someone else I see. Just allow a fragment of a life to wander free. Oh, but losing everything is like the sun
morning. Now, I know many of you have heard about a man named George Floyd in the last couple of weeks. I know it's appalling to see things like that happen in our society. But today I want to tell you about another African American man who was treated harshly as well. His name is Archie Williams. Archie was 22 years old when he was convicted of attempted murder, aggravated rape, and aggravated burglary. And he was sentenced to life in prison without parole in 1982. He claimed he was innocent, but he didn't have the means of support to fight the state of Louisiana. So he spent the next 37 years of his life in the Louisiana prison, a maximum security facility with a violent reputation. Now, after a non-profit legal organization took up his cause, they adopted his case, they spent decades requesting the DNA testing and fingerprint comparisons. And then one day, they finally proved his innocence. Archie was asked how he survived such hardship and unfairness. And the first thing he said was that freedom was a state of mind. He also said he survived by praying, by singing, and by watching America's Got Talent. He would visualize himself performing on this popular television show. And wouldn't you know, Archie would fulfill his dream 37 years later. He shared his story with the world. He shared his faith. He shared his gift of song. And he sang a song by Elton John called "Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me." Today I'm going to cite some of the words to that song sporadically throughout the sermon, so be warned. I can't fight no more of your darkness. All my pictures seem to fade to black and white. While I'm grown tired and time stands still before me, frozen here on the ladder of my life. Now, one of the judges, Simon Cowell, told Archie that he would never listen to that song the same way again. And of course, all 4 judges voted to send him on to the next round. I can tell you as I watched that show that I was softened, my heart was softened. And I felt the emotional tug. And I love it when that happens. It's for me, it draws me closer to God's heart when my heart softens. You know, in my life, I think I convinced myself or someone else helped convince me that the rational side of my brain was the only thing that was valuable. And that I should try to suppress the emotional side. But I am learning that emotional side is the way to letting God's Spirit work in you. I marvel at people like Archie, though. How did he keep his faith? How did he not lose hope? I don't know about you, but I have to admit, I'm not the most hopeful person in the world. I like to think of myself as a realist. But there have been times in my life with depression, the dull monotony of life, loneliness, that would bring me farther down than I care to go into at this time. But if it wasn't apathy and sadness that I was struggling with, it was anger and bitterness. But years have passed since then. I've grown some in my faith. But then 2020 hit. And I wondered how I would fare during this pandemic. I didn't know. Would I be able to rise above? Or would I fall back into old ways of destructive thinking? And not only that, how would my family, how would my church do? Would they rise above or would they fall back? And today, I think more and more people are living somewhere between sadness and anger. It's much too late to save myself from falling. I took a chance and changed your way of life, but you misread my meaning when I met you. Closed the door, left me blinded by the light. Let me suggest that there are a limited number of ways Christians look at the future. First, there are those who just sit around hoping for Christ's return, and the sooner the better, right? I mean, the world's getting worse by the day. They look at the news, and there's really no hope besides his return. Virus, failing economy, prejudice, violence. This is what greets us every day. And this group kind of has a first cousin. It's not so much people waiting for Christ's return, but it's just waiting for them to just protect themselves to die so they can go to heaven. But either way, both groups are basically waiting for kingdom life to break in and take over. Is this all our hope has to offer? As great as that is someday a hope? The second group of Christians put their trust in a God who will look after them and protect them from all harm. They take some basic principles of the Bible and some certain verses, and they make a rule out of them. They live very simply. Satan is out to make their life hard, or God is out to make their life easier. They forget that God does not always protect us from hardship. In fact, sometimes he purposely tests us. In fact, some people, of course, had to die for their beliefs. But their hope is in a God who will shelter them from all those trials. Now, the third group places their hope in a God who honors person's right to kind of build their own hope, right? After all, God is a God who helps those who help themselves. But throughout all of these philosophies, there's a commonality here. They all seek to motivate themselves to hang in there because nothing's really going to change, barring Christ's return or the end of life as we know it on earth. So we just got to hunker down and get through this. Really? Is that all our faith has to say? Is that the only hope we have? Don't let the sun go down on me. Although I search myself, it's always someone else I see. Just allow a fragment of your life to wander free. But losing everything is like the sun going down on me. I'm curious to know if our view of hope is any different than a person who hopes for $1 million. Whether someone seeks $1 million through inheritance, or through luck, or through hard work, they still use hope as an instrument that will help them change or overcome their circumstances. Is the only difference between a Christian and a non-Christian in the way they use hope is the place they put their hope in? Do we put our hope in money or do we put our hope in God? Is that basically the only difference in what we believe? Or is there something different about how we define hope? How we embrace it that's different from those who don't believe? But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Have you ever seen the movie Shawshank Redemption? A great movie, came out in the 90s, I think. And there was a character named Andy who was sentenced to 2 life sentences for a crime he didn't commit. I guess being thrown into a prison for a life you didn't commit is an image we're supposed to take home today. I gave you 2 examples of that. And at one point, Andy managed to do something crazy in his prison. He managed to put music over the public address system, and so all the inmates and everybody heard this music. And of course, he was caught, and he was punished for it. 2 weeks in solitary confinement. And after his stint in confinement, he told his friend that it was the easiest time he'd ever spent. He said that music provided hope to his inmates. Now his friend looked at him and studied him a little bit and said, "Oh, hope. Hope is a dangerous thing. Hope can drive a man insane. It's got no use on the inside. You better get used to that idea." Well, hope is dangerous, isn't it? Have you ever gotten your hopes up for something and then had them dashed? You know that hope has a downside. I relate to this. I know I've got excited for things before and then been disappointed. So I always just try to downplay things. And if things come out better, then hey, but I don't like to get my hopes up. You know, in 2 Kings, Elisha tells a woman she's going to give birth to a son. And it says in 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 15 through 17, it says, "Then Elisha said, 'Call her.' So he called her, and she stood in the doorway. And about this time next year, Elisha said, 'You will hold a son in your arms.' 'No, my lord,' she objected. 'Please, man of God, don't mislead your servant.' But the woman became pregnant. And the next year, about that same time, she gave birth to a son, just as Elisha had told her. And I don't blame the woman for having her doubts, not wanting to get her hopes up. So on one hand, people are skeptical, and they're reluctant to put their hopes in something that is going to be kind of empty and it's not going to come true. At the same time, people are desperately craving for hope in this day and age. So I ask you, what does God offer them besides a someday or a hang in there? What does God offer us? I can't light no more of your darkness. All my pictures seem to fade to black and white. I'm growing tired and time stands still before me, frozen here on the ladder of my life. Now I'm going to be looking specifically at the book of Hebrews on our discussion of hope. So let me start with chapter 3, verses 6 through 8. But Christ is faithful as the son over God's house, and we are his house. If indeed we hold firmly to our confidence and the hope in which we glory. So as the Holy Spirit says, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as you did in the rebellion during the time of testing in the wilderness. Here are the basic points. I think this passage is saying to us, it says, Jesus is in charge of the house, but we are the house. The people of God are the house. And I believe on a spiritual and emotional level, there's a fine line between living in a house and living in a prison. I know some of you have felt like your house has been a prison the last couple months. However, it's a state of mind. Archie Williams lived in prison, and yet he somehow at times made it feel like home. Hebrew tells us clearly what will lead us to the prison and what will lead us towards a home. It gives us the keys to both. It says choose. So we choose which key we'll take hold of. And if we want a key to the house, we have to take hold to our confidence and our hope in Christ. My NIV version uses the word courage instead of confidence, which in this passage I think I liked a little better. And the writer of Hebrews is basically wondering, is his people starting to lose confidence that they can overcome their circumstances? And that their faith can actually elevate them above their circumstances? So let me ask you the same question. Are you losing confidence that God can help you live above your circumstances? The author's wondering if his people are beginning to just doubt whether their faith is worth the struggle. So let me ask you the same question. Are you beginning to doubt if your faith is worth the struggle? Now, this passage tells me two other things as well. Hope is not something that just comes naturally to all of us, maybe to any of us. We must foster it. We must grow it. And I'm going to be sharing how that can happen in the coming weeks. It takes a cooperation with the Spirit. It also says in this passage, I think, that we have a responsibility to be a person of courage and hope. That's what makes you a child of God. Because you know what will happen if you don't? Your heart will become hard. And there's a lot of hard hearts out there today. Now, you can argue if you want that there's a good reason for people to have hard hearts. Maybe there's a reason, but it's never a good thing to get a hard heart. Because it will take you from living in a home to living in a prison. Don't let the sun go down on me. Although I search myself, it's always someone else I see. I just allow a fragment of your life to wander free. But losing everything is like the sun going down on me. Hebrews 3 goes on to say, see to it, brothers and sisters, that none of you has a sinful, unbelieving heart that turns away from the living God. But encourage one another daily, as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. We have come to share Christ, if indeed we hold our original conviction firmly to the very end. I certainly will argue that God will change our circumstances at some point. We have hope that that will happen. But our hope is not limited to our circumstances. Our hope is about a God who gives us joy and strength regardless of our circumstances, who can soften our heart even when circumstances are telling us to harden it. It doesn't come quickly or easily, but God will not give up on us. And that's why he tells us to encourage one another. So yes, encourage one another. I don't care how you do it. Facebook, phone calls, in person, text, email. There's a lot of ways to communicate encouragement. Encourage one another. We must place our hope in the Father and the Son and the Spirit, who can grow hope in people even when their circumstances don't change. The sun may go down on you, but his sun won't let you down. Grace be to God. Our God is a God who wants to give us hope, who offers hope, who grows our hope. Don't give up. Don't give in. Don't let that heart become hard. Soften it. Let your heart mourn and melt for this world, not become hard and cold to it. You can be a light. You can make a difference. Praise be to God. Have a good one.
The world's thy hands have with